No, for a couple hours.
Okay.
You tell them they can have their first drink, stuff.
They're like, how long till Mr. Rob comes back? So I can have time to paint my picture.
All right, we're live. Todd, you can go.
Good, Paul. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Todd, Tuckey, President of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to welcome and thank everybody for joining the Chamber today at our virtual town hall meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Paul Markle, our Interim Executive Director, for a few words. Paul.
Good morning, everyone. I won't take up too much time. Thank you to Andrea, Ian, and John, and Stephannie from the city of Barrie for joining us today. Bit of a different flavor. We've got some Canadian chamber content as well as the business side of the city of Barrie. So I'm thinking this is going to be a great day. But I won't take up any more time. So onwards and upwards there, Todd.
Great, thanks, Paul. So in recent months, we've truly seen the spirit of Team Canada and at every level of government as they have come together to ensure that Canadian families and businesses are helped through the economic implications of COVID-19. They have announced supports, listened to feedback, and then made adjustments to meet the needs of Canadians. The cooperation of all involved has made the decision-making process faster and way better than we've ever seen before. As we move towards reopenings, the situation continues to evolve every day, and the task of guarding Canadians through COVID-19 is far from over. Government is still actively seeking input to ensure the needs are met and to address the issues faced by various sectors and communities. In a moment, I'll introduce each one of our panelists and then ask them to provide a brief update to you from their level of government, after which we'll go directly to the Q&A. To submit a question, please click on the Q&A button on your Zoom platform, type in your question, and I will read them to our people here today. So I'll just let you know who our panelist is, and then after that we'll get into their 2 minutes. So we have Stephannie Schlichter from the city of Barrie. We have MPP Andrea Khanjin, Barrie Innisfil. MP John Brassard, Barrie Innisfil. Ian Faris, Senior Vice President, Chamber Network Relations and Advocacy, Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Our MPP Doug Downey and MP Doug Shipley have sent their regrets as they both had prior commitments, but if you have any questions for them, please email them directly and they will get back to you. For the contact details, go to the Chamber website at barriechamber.com/COVID-19, and all this will be online after this meeting is over anyways. So to start off, we'll give you roughly 2 minutes each, and if you need a little more, fire away. And we'll start off with Stephannie Schlichter, City of Barrie. Welcome, Stephannie.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate. Thrilled to be here and happy to talk about the economic recovery plan that we've been working on with our local business stakeholders, including the Chamber, the Sandbox, Henry Bernick Entrepreneurship Center, Barrie Construction Association. We've spent over the last 4 weeks, 2 of which out consulting with many of your members, talking about at the municipal level what we can do to help support entrepreneurs and business owners in the recovery process. Some of the key themes that we heard were around ensuring our entrepreneurs have the supports they need, digital capacity, so infrastructure around the waterfront and in the downtown, as well as supporting the downtown and really positioning the city from a capital perspective and the investments that they're making to champion recovery. So that report is actually going forward to council on Monday. In regards to the movement to stage 2, the city is working on opening up some of their facilities, some of the park maintenance, and some of the pieces that are obviously critical as we continue to move businesses open and forward. We also have a couple of reports going on Monday that also talk to the downtown and expanding some of those loading zones to champion curbside pickup as a way to keep business and people able to shop, as well as looking at a pilot for pedestrianizing the Dunlop Street and what a pilot project could look like. So lots on the go, and certainly we look forward to sharing more details of the report as it comes out on Monday.
Great, thanks, Stephannie. Next, MPP Andrea Khanjin, Barrie Innisfil. Welcome, Andrea.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. And I just wanted to, let you know that you can always still reach out, ask lots of questions, contact my office. And speaking of contact, we have announced yesterday that Ontario is going to be the first province to issue a contact tracing The app is going to be coming out in July. So if you have specific questions, reach out, but privacy will be number one. But this is a great step for us here in Barrie because we're fortunate to be part of stage 2, and many places in our community are open versus some areas like Peel and Toronto are not. And so contact tracing is going to be important for those who might be coming to our neighborhoods or coming to our communities. You're on mute, Todd.
Talking to myself. You get used to it after a while, Andrea. I've been home alone. All right. Thanks, Andrea. MPP, John Brassard, Barrie, Innisfil. Good morning, John.
Thanks, Todd, and thanks again for putting this on. It's a terrific opportunity to connect with chamber members and to connect with all of you. Ian, I think this is the first time that you've joined us on the chamber call, so welcome. At least the first time since I've been on, but it's good to have the Canadian Chamber here. And you know, off the top, Todd, you talked a lot about the approach that's gone into dealing with this, not just from a business standpoint, but from an individual standpoint, and the work at all levels of government, including organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. I know Karen Beattie has been very vocal and very active throughout this whole process, the Ontario Chamber, as well as the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Many of the programs that were announced initially, you know, in many cases fell short of what was expected. And it was the advocacy work of, you know, all of these organizations, as well as the opposition parties to not just push the government to change some of these programs, whether it was the emergency wage subsidy, some of the loan programs and other programs. But we've been able to do that collectively, and you know, unfortunately, I do have some negative news this morning. The emergency business count portal was supposed to open up this morning to reflect the changes to sole proprietors, to dividend small business payrolls, as well as family-owned operations. Unfortunately, the finance minister indicated last night that that portal will not be open today. So the application process has been delayed. I know that this has affected tens of thousands of small and family-owned enterprises across the country, especially here in Barrie, Innisfil, given the fact that we are such an entrepreneurial community. So I don't have much in the way of details as to why this was postponed. We're trying to find out. My staff is trying to find out right now through our small business shadow minister, but you know, it's a difficult day for a lot of small businesses, expecting that this portal and these applications would be processed today. The other thing, I just got back from Ottawa yesterday. I was there all week for the special COVID-19 committee. But on Wednesday, we had a version of the House of Commons to deal with the largest expenditure bill in the history of this country, $87 billion, and it passed. A lot of it is COVID-19 related. We also heard this week that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has come out with figures of $256 billion in projected deficits this year, and the debt is mounting, and I'm talking about a one-year deficit of $256 billion, with a debt that's expected to be close to $1 trillion, if not over $1 trillion. The government also announced this week that there will be a fiscal snapshot, not a fiscal update, a fiscal snapshot. I'm not quite sure what that means. And if I sound disappointed, I am, frankly, because at a time when deficits are mounting, at a time when debt is mounting, it's incumbent upon the government, not the Parliamentary Budget Officer, to give an indication to Canadians just where we are from a fiscal standpoint. And so we've been calling on the government for a full fiscal update, and this week the Prime Minister announced a fiscal snapshot. So I don't know what to expect on July 8th, but I expect that we're not going to hear as much as what we've been hearing from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, although we should. The second thing, or the last thing that I want to talk about is we are producing a bunch of videos with businesses that have gone through the COVID-19 crisis and are now coming out of the COVID-19 crisis. They're opening their doors as a result of stage 2. And we really want to promote businesses within the community and talk to business owners about what they've experienced and what they expect. And so if anybody wants to, who owns a business in Barrie, Innisfil, to have me come by and talk to them about what they've experienced and what they expect, we'll be glad to do that. Please contact our office at 705-726-5959. Really two reasons for it. Number one, exactly what I said, what they've been through, what to expect, but also to promote the fact that the business is open and the need to not just shop local, but support local as well, Todd. And so that's it. There are still some issues with the rent relief program and the wage subsidy program. I've been dealing with local business owners all week on this and have been bringing them directly to the attention of the ministers. I haven't got any answers back yet, but if anybody does have any problems or questions or having trouble because the programs are too prescriptive, I need to know that so that I can bring that feedback back to the minister. So that's it, and look forward to any questions that anyone might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Thanks for the update. and you are correct, our next panelist, Ian Faris, this will be his first visit with us, at least on a virtual town hall. So again, up next will be Ian Faris, Senior Vice President, Chamber Network Relations and Advocacy with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Ian.
Great. Well, thank you. It's great to be here. And I really want to thank Todd and Paul for the invitation. And of course, it's great to join a panel of political guests, and look forward to meeting you in person at some point. But for now, we'll have to do it virtually. I just want to touch base on a few things that the Canadian Chamber's been up to during the COVID pandemic. You know, when the pandemic hit, we really wanted to help businesses immediately. So we quickly created the Canadian Business Resiliency Network, or CBRN.ca. It's an initiative that brought together a number of national associations, and John mentioned one of them, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, very important, Retail Council of Canada, but also all of our chamber members, our boards of trade, and a number of trade associations across Canada. And the intent of that group is it's really to help businesses prepare, persevere, and eventually prosper through COVID. We've been delivering recommendations to the government and advocating for measures that will help business through the crisis, working with our provincial chambers like the Ontario Chamber of Commerce to harmonize our messaging, coordinate our messages with provincial governments. And we've also, you know, as we progress through the pandemic, we've created a roadmap to recovery. And this builds on our roadmap to prosperity, which was essentially our 2019 federal election platform, really providing a number of recommendations to government on how to prosper and recover from pandemic. Now, I said prepare. That's, you know, provides a lot of insights, tools, best practices. We hold a weekly network call throughout Canada with our chambers and associations, a whole slew of webinars that we've undertaken, and of course outreach to chambers and associations, much like we're doing today. In terms of persevere, we're advocating for timely and effective policies for stimulus, and again, John highlighted some of the challenges with the government. Some of the programming has fallen short, and we've really pushed to help out businesses and make sure that policy reflects their needs. Finally, to prosper, again, the new policy recommendations we're putting forward, program ideas, recovery initiatives, that really forms that recovery document. I talked about the roadmap. But there's 5 key elements to CBRN that I want to touch on before we get into our Q&A. We have a microsite, cbrn.ca I mentioned. We put a reopening toolkit on that site, and it provides a number of links to other private sector and government toolkits. We have the Business Resilience Service, and that's a national toll-free bilingual hotline. It's free to users and provides expert advice to businesses. It's been extended. It's been operating for, I think it's the end of its 4th week. It's been extended for a few more weeks, and we've had a tremendous response where businesses are able to get expert advice on understanding the government programming, understanding some of the things the challenges that they're facing from typically accounting professionals. But it's really been a very good resource for a number of businesses. We also have a small business relief fund, and we're going to be announcing the recipients of 62 winners. They're each going to get a $10,000 grant, and we're going to be announcing that on June 29th. And that's really to help companies that are really struggling and have had a tough time. And the stories that we've heard, we've asked each company in their application to to provide the rationale for receiving the grant and why they're a needy recipient. And it's just been tremendously heartwarming, but it's also tough to read some of the tough stories that businesses have gone through. Also, the sort of the final point I want to put on is the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. And we've undertaken 2 surveys with Statistics Canada. The first came out at the end of April and had 13,000 businesses respond. Really the most comprehensive data available during the crisis. And our second survey is in the field now, and we expect results in mid-July. So that should give us some further data points to provide, form recommendations to the government. I'll just leave it there, and we'll hopefully we'll get into a little more discussion in the Q&A. So back to you, Todd. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and appreciate the update. Also, we had an update recently, and I'll just put it over the airways, and the Chamber released that it was from Central Ontario Broadcasting, which is a locally owned entity. They own Rock 95 and Cool FM here in Barrie. And they put out a website. You can do an application at www.recovery2020.ca. They're giving away $1 million in advertising to help businesses come out of this. Businesses that are struggling, not-for-profits, different entities. And if you get anybody that's watching here, you go to that site and it's an application, you process the application, and they're going to get out as much as can before, they actually run out of the dollars. But it's $1 million put forward by Doug Bingley. And I think that's just great for businesses, especially those struggling, and they need people to know who they are, where they are, that their doors are still open. And that's going to certainly help a lot. So I want to throw that out there. Stephannie, I know you've been working on the recovery plan with the City of Barrie, as discussed earlier, and I'm not sure how much of it you can actually talk about. I know it's not going to council, I think, until next week, but is there anything you can share or would like to share, or would you rather hold off?
No, I'm happy to share. It's actually live right now on the agenda, so you can go on the City of Barrie website and have a look at it. Members of General Committee will consider it on Monday. But there are a few things, and I think you hit on a great point around understanding or having small or our local businesses be findable, and that digital presence. And that was a key theme that came out of a lot of our consultations was, is there an opportunity for a common marketplace? How do we help companies get online quickly? So through our Small Business Center and in partnership with the Chamber and a few, and Henry Burnick Entrepreneurship Center and Sandbox, we were able to put together a handful of programming to help companies do that. Since that point, FedDev has provided some funding along with Google, to allow businesses to have access to students who can help develop base web platform. We put out, again, in partnership with the Chamber, a competition to try and accelerate an online sales platform for businesses to be able to go on quickly and be able to put their wares out there. We should be launching that shortly, and I think there'll be some opportunity to potentially extend some of our digital Main Street programming. So I think in terms of that digital capacity ability and really helping our companies get out there, get exposure, and get found, there's some really great tools coming out of the recovery plan, and with the support of, again, FedDev and our partners, including the Chamber.
Perfect. Okay, we'll get into some of the Q&A. Let's start off with, what progress has been made to address the gaps in the commercial rent assistance program? Landlords not participating, and I don't know what my options are now. Anybody want to jump in on that one? Andrea?
Sure. So we, the Ontario Legislature sat this past week, and late Wednesday evening, we passed the halt to commercial evictions legislation. And so the way that this is going to work is, we recognize there's great, landlords, and we have great examples of them here in Barrie who have been able to reach a cordial agreement with their tenants, and, things are moving on. But I've, also heard from some that just they know their landlords qualify for the program, they're not opting in. So what this halt to commercial evictions is meant to do is those who know that they qualify for the rent relief program done by the federal government, if they are not opting in, we're halting that eviction as a provincial government. And so that is retroactive from May. So basically anyone who receive notice or whatnot from May all the way up until August. So that window, you will not be evicted from your unit. And so we've been trying to not use such heavy-handed measures as a provincial government. We have been trying to say, and Premier Ford's been really good at this, saying, can you, kind of reach a mutual agreement amongst yourselves, the commercial landlord and the tenant, because it's going to be hard in this environment to find a new tenant. So we tried that with step number 1. But as we saw that more landlords were not taking up this program, we had to introduce some more heavy-handed approaches. And this isn't to, undermine our landlords. Many of them are small business owners themselves. It's really to kind of, push those who do qualify to apply for the program.
So the other thing that's happening too, Todd, is like many of the programs that have been rolled out, this one has been very prescriptive on landlords in terms of the application process. And I'm hearing from local landlords who are going through the process of applying, but because of one factor or another are having their applications rejected. So there are specific examples to that. As I said at the top, I've been dealing with the Minister of Small Business about this to try to make the program less prescriptive. And I think it should be, when you do have landlords that want to participate in the program, they want to provide rent relief and get the subsidy that is being offered by both levels of government, and yet are being told that their applications can't be processed or they've been rejected for one of several reasons. And so that's something that we're trying to work on to not only bring to the attention of the minister, but also have her act about this. And I think Ian is probably in a better position. We can speak locally, but across the country, we're not seeing the type of uptake that one would expect from this particular program because of it being too prescriptive. Ian, do you have anything to add on that?
No, John, you've hit the nail right on the head. Right across Canada, we're hearing the same stories. Lots of tenants that are unable to either attract their landlords to join the program, or there's troubles with the landlord actually accessing the program. A number of provinces, we've worked in a federal, provincial, territorial capacity with our chamber network to get them to put a call out to their provinces or territories. Ontario heard that. The Ontario Chamber was very successful in working with the government and in getting that commercial eviction ban put in place. A few other provinces as well. But yeah, we're hearing it across the country, and it's a program that I talked about, that emergency grant program, and a lot of the stories were of companies and particularly focused on the rent side. It's a tremendous expense and a real problem.
Paul?
Yeah, what we're hearing right now from our businesses that are beginning to reopen is, where they thought they may be in a position to get that subsidy. Now that they're reopening, they're finding that their sales are stronger than what they expected. So they're just missing the mark. And I'm hoping that the Fed's province, start looking at some sort of a sliding scale for rent relief. And as John has mentioned, it's too prescriptive at the moment, but something has to happen in there. I can even take our building for example. We're down 65%. We don't qualify, but I really have no other revenue streams other than the membership side. So, I'm even looking at our business, the chamber as a business, and saying, okay, what are we going to do to navigate this for the next year? So, yeah, this really is a concern, and it's going to just get, to be a bigger concern as we get into the later stages of reopening.
It's not just the rent relief program, Paul, and Ian's probably hearing about this as well as I am locally. And I, again, brought it up this week with my counterpart in Ottawa. I brought it up with Pierre Poilievre, our finance critic. The emergency wage subsidy is another thing. That the uptake on the wage subsidy hasn't been as great as what the government had anticipated. But for those that have use the wage subsidy to keep their employees employed. Now that they're starting to see recovery, if the 30% threshold was there, now that they're starting to see their businesses start to recover and gaining revenue, they now find themselves outside of the qualification threshold. And yet, in many cases, their businesses are still down by 25%. So they're going to have trouble meeting payroll. And in some cases, one franchisee locally told me that You know, he's been paying a premium to his employees in addition to the wage subsidy, but he now doesn't know whether he's going to qualify for the wage subsidy going forward, despite the fact that his business is still down 25%, because he's outside of that threshold now. So, you know, on an incremental basis, at a minimum, we have to take into account the recovery aspect of these businesses, that, you know, they're not going to go from 50% reduction to 100% you know, loss, or 100% of their pre-COVID revenues. It's going to take time to do that, in some cases several months, and yet they still need the support through the wage subsidy, but now they're not going to qualify for it because they're outside of that minimum threshold. So it's that's another challenge that we're finding, as well as the you know, the recovery is starting to happen. It's not going to happen quickly, but we need to continue to support these businesses and the people that they employ.
And they're also running into the problem with their part-time as they start to scale up their operations, expand their hours. You know, these kids that are saying, you know what, I can sit on CERB for $500 a week, and you know, that doesn't help matters either. I know that the employer has a remedy for that, but they're already struggling to get people. You know, none of them are going to be looking to write off those employees just because they won't return. So yeah, it's a real catch-22 in a lot of cases.
What's fascinating to me, Paul, is, you know, and just the sheer economics of it. We've got millions of people who are not working, and yet we have a labor shortage in this country, and we have a local labor shortage. Now, how do you you know, how do you sort of bring together the fact that you've got, you know, what is it now, 4 million, 5 million people that are not working, and there's so many jobs that are available? Something doesn't compute purely from an economic standpoint. And I know that this is an issue that not just the Chamber, provincial and federal, has brought up, but also the Canadian Federation and Independent Business, because employers are struggling right now. There are lots of jobs out there for people who want to work.
Right, and I'll just, I mean, on that point, I'll just say that, you know, provincially, it got kind of missed, but when the Minister of Finance, Rod Phillips, did the economic update, you know, part of that included funding for retraining and the Second Careers program. So there was a lot of opportunities there if you're, you know, looking to switch careers or you're looking to scale up. There was opportunities there. And then, you know, weeks ago, our Minister of Labour, Monty Naughton, announced for the tools for apprenticeship programs. We recognize that, you know, tools are a big expense when you're going into the skills trades profession. And so, you know, there's a fund, there's a loan program there. So you can take advantage of this opportunity. You know, the jobs are out there. Start training now, and then, you know, go out there and you're able to get a very high paying job that will likely pay you way more than the relief benefits that the, you know, Liberals are offering. So it's just it's those scales. And I'll say that in terms of the provincial government, is for us, it's frustrating because we put $241 million of Ontario taxpayer dollars into the rent relief program, you know, and we wanted more people to opt in and generally help businesses. And then there were a lot of amendments that had to be made. I know Ian's probably very aware of this, but it was the gross rent wasn't originally included. So, you know, our finance minister for the province had to pick up the phone and start, you know, negotiating the terms, but we had already given up the 241 million. So it's one of those, so at least we got a win there in terms of what we heard from landlords. There was a bit of ambiguity as to whether you have a mortgage or you don't have a mortgage on your property and you're a commercial landlord. So all those certainties had to be there originally for landlords to opt in. And so, you know, we were able to make gains there, but like John Brassard was saying, there's still some gaps in the program.
Yeah, and back to a comment from both John and Paul. What we're getting from a lot of members is they actually feel they're competing against the government because of the CERB. They're having trouble getting employees coming back. And then to your point, John, where you're saying, you know, some places are actually paying a premium, and we've had those discussions with them. They're doing that to entice their employees to come back. One of the issues you have with paying them a premium is for the wage subsidy, it's based on what they were earning prior to COVID. So you're paying them the premium. That isn't counted in as part of the equation when you're looking at the subsidy back. So as an owner, you're sort of getting double. You're competing against CERBs. You're saying, I'll pay a premium to ensure to get these employees back, and then you don't qualify for as much of the wage subsidy because now you're paying out the premium. So it's like a double knock. And then like Paul said with rent, like the Chamber's within 5%, you know, we've been down that number for the last 3 months. So we don't qualify for it, even though our landlord is saying, absolutely, if you qualify, we're part of the program. So it's only 5%, but there's no gray area. You're at that 70% or you're not. So it's tough all the way around.
Yeah, and that's still while you're facing a significant year-over-year decline from your pre-COVID revenues, right? So you're having to make up a lot of that stuff with a decline in revenues as well, to the point of competing as well, Todd. So
yeah,
yep, no, we're hearing it as much as you are, believe me.
I just want to chime in on the wage subsidy. I mean, in terms of that, we're really advocating for that sliding scale. You know, I think, Todd, you had mentioned, you know, a lot of companies are bringing, you know, as they reopen, they're bringing employees, you know, increasing hours for employees and really re-engaging. And we really think that they still need some support, but, you know, maybe it's at half the qualifying rate or something like that. However, we also do want to eventually get, you know, a lot of these government programs, they should be sunsetted. We don't want to have them go on forever. It's not, you know, for the sake of the economy, we're going to need to start moving. So that's another challenge as well.
Well, we've already seen that, Ian, where the announcement for the extension of the CERB, for example, just last week. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was till August or till the end of August or so. And as much as these programs have been needed, and they have at the onset of this crisis to support businesses and individuals, sunsetting them becomes that much more critical as the economy starts opening up, because the parliamentary budget officer again said that if the CERB program is extended till January, that's another $64 billion added to the deficit on top of, as I said earlier, the $264 billion that we're projected to have just in this fiscal year alone. So, you know, there has to be, to Ian's point, an incremental acknowledgement that as businesses recover, they still require the support, but they may not necessarily need the full support of the government at that point, whether it's the CERB, the wage subsidy, or the emergency business account.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's great and it's unfortunate all at the same time. I know a local restaurateur that had a job fair, even though they have great employees, they have more than enough employees. The problem they ran into is they're to the employees, and the employees are, well, be a patio, be part-time, be this and that. I'd rather stay on CERB. So they know they could take them off of CERB and tell them they have to come back, but then they say, now you have a disgruntled employee, where's the value in that? You're going to lose out. Again, there's another one that's competing against the job fair, and a lot of their employees stay home. And I don't know how you fix that, how you fine tune it, but yeah, obviously, you know, something needs to be done because it's too beneficial to people. I think the number's a little high, and maybe they should start scaling that back and scale back to say 300. We could take it from there. Paul?
Well, I don't know. In my house, when you cut off the tap, the kids get a job. So it may be a simplified way of looking at things, but I think we maybe need to, you know, I think CERB was put in place to simplify the application process and to get more people served quickly. You know, maybe it goes back to an EI model as jobs become available and there's a job shortage or in a surplus of workers. I mean, they'll take the job if they don't have any money coming from another source. It's just a different way of approaching it, I guess. Tough love, but something has to give at some point.
You're right. As you're aware, Paul, there's a lot of places, Barrie, Innisfil, an area that are hiring and just can't get staff. And I have to believe a lot of that is because these people are on CERB. And it's like, you know, for the difference, even if they would make a little bit more, tax implications, this and that, daycare, everything else taken into account, they go, well, you know what, it's just better off I stay at home. So anyways, let's move on to the next one. And this is probably geared more towards Andrea, but anybody can jump in on this one. It says, with the regional approach to reopening and many people from stage 1 regions traveling to stage 2 for services, if there is a spike in the numbers in other regions, what is the threshold that will push some or all regions back to stage 1?
That's a great question, and I wish I was a public health officer. I'm not, but I mean, look, the way the stages worked, right? We're generally, as a province, we're in the 5th straight day of our numbers being under 200. again, the whole province. That's a good sign. But, if there is a spike, we have local public health units that will be tracking those numbers, and that will feed into the provincial reopening strategy. That's why the reopening framework was a framework. It was a roadmap, not a timeline. So I'm getting a lot of questions of, is stage 3 going to be July 1st, July 20th? I got an email from Good Life. They're opening July so-and-so. And so that's the reason it was a framework. So you've got to track those numbers and respond accordingly in public policy. But what I will say is that yesterday the province did announce, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the contact tracing app. That's going to be huge for our community and others who are in stage 2, going on to phase 3, I should say. We're phase 3, stage 2. And as we keep moving forward, that's going to be crucial, because we'll be able to say, Andrea, you were in X park, you might have, leaned against this bench and did some stretching, and these are the individuals you might have come in contact with, please go get testing. And that's going to be updated on your phone right away. The goal is to have that app up and running mid-July. The government of Ontario had worked with Shopify to develop this app. Privacy was a huge concern, and that's obviously going to be protected. This app does not track where you're actually going. It just uses the Bluetooth technology to identify who you've come in contact with, and then you get a notification right away, go get the test. So that's going to be huge in terms of bringing the cases down. And when we know a case has been identified, we're able to get them tested, and more importantly, they're going to be told to go into self-isolation for 14 days. So that will help with, just human behavior and asking people to download this app. But of course, you've seen all levels of government, all platforms doing a lot of advertising to tell people, keep social distancing, wear a mask if you're in closed constrained quarters. That's still, no matter what stage we're in, that's still going to be a requirement for a while. So, keep posted on that. But in terms of regressing and starting to close, a lot of public health experts and those doctors on the news have been talking about, the second wave. I think that's the biggest concern right now amongst public health officials. So as great as it feels that, we can go out and have a drink or food on the patio this weekend or during the week, we still have, it's in all of us, right? I mentioned this at the beginning of this pandemic, our health is in our hands. That's still the case. Every one of your individual actions leads to a reaction. So if you're not taking certain measures, those numbers will go, they could go up. So just be vigilant, and then we can get the economy up and open again. There's a lot of businesses that are still not in stage 2. They're very frustrated, and I believe that I hear it.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Next one up, and this goes into an announcement this week that came out from I believe it was the CEO or president of Sick Kids, and it says, recently Sick Kids Hospital released a report with recommendations on how schools should be opening and the negative impact on mental and emotional health that could result from requiring children to distance. Is this being considered in the plan for reopening schools? Also, my daycare is not opening until the fall because they share the concerns expressed by Sick Kids. A key component of early childhood education is learning social skills and development through interacting with their peers. At this point, they would be offering babysitting services rather than early childhood education. Is the government looking at making changes to requirements based on Sick Kids report? And I'll just make one quick comment before any of you guys jump in. I watched the interview the other day and I found it interesting. And the recommendation from that gentleman was that schools absolutely open the beginning of September, that these kids need to get back into school. And then all the background with testing on the kids and interaction with the kids. And I think it was like less than 3% for whatever reason actually will get COVID. So there was probably more than I saw on it, Andrea, and I'm sure you're better versed with this than I am, but I found it interesting that they were saying they're really pushing the provincial government to reopen the schools for September.
Yeah, I mean, mental health has been, no matter what age you're at during this pandemic, has taken a toll on everyone. I was talking to a business not that long ago, and they actually have a HR psychologist professional that helps talk to the employees every day before they come into work to basically deprogram them from this fear, the fear they might have received watching the news in the evening. And then come Monday morning, it's even worse because now they have 2 to 3, nights of this type of news. And of course, this reflects on kids. So there's been a lot of progress made on that front. So bear with me as I answer this question because there's a lot of answers. So yesterday, it's not so much a response to sick kids, but it really complements what they're trying to achieve. And that is when it comes to mental health supports for children in schools, this particular government, again, we've only been in government for 2 years. We've been really vigilant at expanding mental health supports. We put together a $3.8 billion mental health strategy for the whole province. But what that means for Ontario is it actually the way that our mental health strategies work is it's not just for healthcare, it's for schools. It's there's a mental health officer that rides along with their OPP officers. So we're breaking it up into sectors. So yesterday, something the Minister of Education announced was he increased what's called the grants for student needs. So it's money tied to every single student within a school. And so yesterday, basically, there's been about $213 million extra dedicated to this grants for student needs. So the total announced, is 736 million. And so what that's going to do just for the school year of 2020 to 2021, just for that year, that's the investment that was made, is going to give extra supports to children with special education, mental health and well-being supports, language instruction, STEM, the whole gamut. But the important part in that is the mental health piece. And so certainly that's why a lot of those investments were made, and there's an increase for those supports. So when we're ready to reopen schools come fall, and we work with public health as to how that's going to work, we're also vigilant that all the students are going to need that extra mental health support. And that's been a key pillar in this entire pandemic. There's been a lot of tools we've put online in terms of mental health supports. It was supposed to be rolled out a bit later, but we fast-tracked that ability to provide services for adults and for youth in terms of mental health. So that's very key. We also recognize that when we closed schools, it was also impacting parents financially, which can also cause mental health stress. So there was a fund dedicated that parents could apply to so they can get some supports. It was about, if they applied, it kind of came out depending on your situation. But if you applied, you received about $200 for children under the age of 12. If you have a child with disabilities, you get $250 per child. It was a one-time payment, but it was something. And we had about 1.5 million families that benefited from this program. So that was sort of the first step in daycare relief, kind of answering the daycare question. And there's going to be a lot of requirements for daycares to run safely because we need that reassurance for parents. No one's going to want to send their child to daycare if they know it's unsafe. So I understand, some of the daycare providers will say this is an extra burden, extra cost to me. But if you look at it, what parent is going to send their child to daycare, even with 10 people, if they know that it's not, there's no guarantee it's sanitized, there's no checks, there's no plan in place. So that customer base you would get of 10 might not even come to your doorstep if they don't have that guarantee. So provincially, we worked with public health as we do through this whole pandemic and basically identified key areas where they have to, have a safety plan, they have to have screening, daily attendance record, and cleaning. Some of those, in terms of cleaning, was a day-to-day thing that happened in daycares anyways. But the new point to that question is, how do you do the social distancing? And that takes a toll on mental health as well. And again, as we get through this first part of the daycare reopening, we'll be able to work with public health of how do you retool that? How do you, take into account the mental health of children if they have to be spaced out? It's constantly evolving. Certainly with daycares, step one was to get those things reopened for parents and for children too. At least they can see their peers, and parents can, be able to go to work and send their children to daycare. And in addition to this, which I will add, it wasn't part of the question, but it's camps. A big part of growing up, especially in our area, is going to camp. And so camps are open. If you are a dance studio and you offer camps during the summer, you can open your camps. You just can't open your dance studio and you can't be touching each other for choreography. But I've seen dance studios that have been able to do it. And that's great for children's mental health. And it's great for their parents' mental health as well. So it's a loaded question. I tried to touch points on that. But if you want more details, just reach out to me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrea. And there's a follow-up here in regards to daycare. And it says, is additional support coming for daycare facilities that are unable to open due to health and safety requirements? are unable to open because of the limited number of children to staff ratio. This is impacting the workforce and parents being able to return. And I find that an interesting question, Andrea. Obviously, you'd have more insight than I would. I've looked at some of the requirements, and that depending on the actual room and all that, I think it's a capacity of 10 children for a fixed area, something like that. So there's only so much staffing required for that. There's going to be less cleaning required for all that. So I'm not sure where some of these thoughts are missing it, where thoughts are as to why it would be such an increase. I can appreciate where they were going to lose some revenue because maybe they had 40 or 50 children and they're down to 2 rooms of 10 each, so they have 20 children. But I don't understand like additional costs, and maybe you could clarify that if you know it or not.
I mean, certainly. So what I've heard is just it's the getting the extra supplies, like any business, right? I mean, I think many businesses weren't, normally used to securing tubs of hand sanitizer or Lysol wipes and that kind of thing. And it's those incremental costs that over a while, especially if your customer base is only 10 people or 10 children, it can add up. And so it's something we're hearing, and we're hearing that it's the cost of hand sanitizer, for example, it's very expensive to procure. So even though they find a portal, and the government's launched the protective equipment portal for those that are looking for that equipment, but it's still expensive. So we're aware of that, and we're trying to work out some sort of a bulk order where we can help businesses with reducing the cost of securing those supplies. And so that is in the works of how we could do that to reduce the pricing. And then once we have something more on that front, it will be announced, or we'll be publishing that for consumption. But that's one of the costs. In terms of 10, I mean, I've seen some daycares get a bit creative, right? They've run their daycare of 10 people indoors because they have the staffing, but then they'll also offer a camp outdoors as well because they have the space. And so, so some of that is taking place. And the flip side is, you're not open at all, and you don't have any customers. And certainly, before they were even able to open with 10, it was a struggle to be able to pay, rent and all those other things. So this is a step towards, more, but we've got to take public health as number one. And all these things that the government, launches, it's been in step with what we're hearing from health professionals. So if health professionals tell us only 10 and the kids have to be separated, we've got to follow that, because one child getting sick is one too many.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul?
So I'm not gonna beat this to death, but there are some real concerns. I mean, from a cost standpoint, we've got 6 daycares in Barrie that reopened since they were allowed to. One of them has since closed, and I just heard of another one that is basically not going to reopen until September. And the reasoning behind that is they've extended CERB until August, so their staff are looked after. And lastly, it's many of them are independent nonprofits, and they have really tight budgets. They can't afford to add staff in to be able to take care of the increased cleaning and screening and all those other things. And then if one of their employees gets sick, they need to have additional staff to cover off the 14 days they'd have to quarantine in between. So basically, they're just making a business decision that not opening is a better answer. The problem for that is that employers that are relying on or getting their employees back now have a staff member that has a decision to make as to whether they don't return when they can't find independent daycare. So you're right, it is a giant box of darkness for a lot of these people as to how they survive this in the meantime. So just a comment is coming directly from one of our members who happens to be very involved in their daycare.
I don't know, Paul, whether I mentioned this last time I was on as well, but our Ontario caucus did a conference call with some of the top economists in the country through the Canadian Bankers Association. And they identified as an issue of recovery of our economy, as a matter of public policy, daycare is going to be critical, and addressing the needs of employees that are returning back to work is going to be critical to our economic recovery. And so this is definitely something that governments have to wrap their minds around with respect to policy, because as the bankers have said, if our economic recovery is dependent on our ability to accommodate our workforce to get back to work, and the challenges that exist with daycare, then it's going to be a much slower recovery. if we don't address that challenge. So it's a great point.
Mm-hmm. And certainly, feed, some of those concerns into my office as well. I know, generally speaking, the provincial government has to review the Child Care and Early Years Act. Generally speaking, it governs all the licensed child care providers. So the Minister of Education is reaching out to families and child care providers and how we can amend that, because again, there's a lot of challenges here that we didn't foresee before. But, we tried to work really hard to do what we could as fast as we could to open up daycares. But again, the public health thing is just, there's no way around that, right? And so I understand that, but if you have ideas of how you would operate, how you would run, we've got over 550 childcare centers in this province, 124 licensed home childcare agencies, but where is there an opportunity there to expand it? We've got licensed and unlicensed, so I'm open to any sort of feedback, and I can certainly try to get our education minister to do some sort of a roundtable with everyone as well, if there's appetite for it, because we need all the ideas in this. This is uncharted waters, and we wouldn't thought this would have been coming to this pandemic, right? No one would have predicted this, so we're trying to do all the right things, and so we've got to work with public health, and 10 seemed to be the right thing at the time.
It will certainly press them your way. I don't think that there's frustration. That's what it comes down to. And I don't think that anyone doesn't recognize the efforts that the government's made to move this along. It's just a challenging time, and you need more information to make good decisions. And we'll certainly help you with getting you some information.
Hey, this one, next one's probably more geared towards Ian and John, because it'll go across the country. With the backlog in EI services, people are able to get the CERB for months before EI kicked in. Now EI is back paying applicants and telling them to pay back the CERB. This process was not disclosed in the EI application process, and people have to wait hours or even days on the phone to get this rectified from the support staff. Any insight into how we're working to overcome the major delays EI services has been experiencing, and how to better inform workers of the process? Gentlemen?
Whoa, that's a tough one. I'll let no real ideas on how to get the EI program or the responses coming quicker, except the investment in more money, which of course just adds to a different problem. We talked a lot about CERB on this edition of your show, and it's a tough one. It's created a lot of problems. The student CERB, or the student portion of it as well. I saw there was a question about trying to get more students involved into the labor force. Well, they also have an enticement to stay out of the labor force. So this is a real tough one for the government. John, I'm not sure if you have any comments.
Well, on the issue of basically what it comes down to is Service Canada and its ability to deal with employment insurance claims and the CERB claims. One of the things that happened right at the onset of this crisis is that all of the bureaucratic focus and the bureaucracy in general was pushed towards making sure that a lot of these claims were processed in an expedited manner. Obviously, people and businesses were suffering, and it was needed to get the money out the door. And so from a bureaucracy standpoint, everything was focused. I can tell you, even in our office here in Barrie, Innisfil, it wasn't until recently that we had access to our Service Canada lines. Now, pre-COVID, my staff had a direct line to Service Canada. If somebody came into our office and talked to us about employment insurance claims or anything else to do with Service Canada, we could call directly and have access through an MP line. Well, that was shut down for at least 2 months from our end. So we didn't even have access to Service Canada. I think the other problem that's been created as a result of this is the shuttering of Service Canada offices right across the country. That happened very early on into this crisis. And the accessibility to the information, it has not been forthcoming in the sense of a timely manner, because there's nobody working in a traditional Service Canada office. And so my office is actually, and I'm sure Andrea has seen this for Ontario issues as well, has become the point for trying to direct people to where they needed to go and to try to get them answers. So it's been a very, very difficult process. The delays as a result of not just shuttering the Service Canada offices, but also realigning the bureaucracy to deal with a lot of these issues has caused a great amount of frustration for not only the residents that I represent here in Barrie, Innisfil, but right across the country, because I'm hearing it from my colleagues as well. And certainly created frustration for my staff, because oftentimes we've not been able to get the answers to the questions that people are asking us.
And I think John made a good point, and I think you made the point, earlier in the program as well. The government made a big effort to get some, personal liquidity into the market, get that money into people's pockets, and when they created CERB, and I don't think they anticipated the the backlog issues that your questioner is rightly raising, and it's going to take a long time to work that out. And to John's point about the Service Canada centers, moving virtual, the employees moving virtual. This has been very tough, not only on the business community and going virtual, but also on the government. They've, they're not in their offices. They're not legally allowed to be in their offices yet. And, many of them we're hearing are not going to be going back to their physical offices or parts of departments. And it's going to be a big change, and that'll affect getting back to landlords. That's really going to affect the commercial market.
Yeah, we're actually Ian, starting to ramp up our office. We're putting protective measures in place, and people will be able to come to my office on an appointment basis soon. My staff are dealing with that right now. Now, on the quickly, Todd, on the issue of the CERB repayment, I know that we recently put information about paying back the CERB if in the event that somebody has to do that on our website. All of the information is there at johnbrassard.com.
Okay. Fun. All right, so be respectful. To wrap up, I'm going to give everybody a minute or two for closing comments, and we'll start with Stephannie Schlichter, for City of Barrie. Are you there, Steph?
I sure am. Thank you. There were a couple of questions that came up on the question panel, so I did put responses in there for those that were looking for them. From a city perspective, we are doing some of the same things, going through our risk management, setting up City Hall to be able to bring staff back and be able to serve the public. I suspect from an in-person perspective, obviously everything, all of our services are accessible from a digital capacity, but we expect, again, over the coming weeks, you'll see some more information coming out about being able to access City Hall from that perspective. Again, the recovery plan goes forward on Monday. There are some other pieces from downtown as well. And we are working on summer camps, so some of those will be offered starting July 13th. So we are very much open from the small business center side, from the economic development side, any businesses, any concerns, anything at all that they would like to share with us. We are very happy to have that feedback, and we are very grateful at a staff level to work very closely with our partners and our MP and MPP offices to work with companies. So thank you for the time, and we are very open to feedback and engaging with our local business community. So thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Steph. Andrea, Khanjin, MPP, Barrie, Innisfil.
Well, thank you everyone again for having me, and again, reach out any time. Like John was saying about his office, we're also open appointment basis only, just so we can control the flow of traffic coming in and out. Something we've been getting a lot of uptake on is printing the posters for social distancing. There's a lot of the guidelines that are available at ontario.ca/COVID safety. So if you're a business and you're ready to open, or you're looking to reopen in stage 3, that website is the go-to website in terms of what to prepare for. And if you need any of those things printed, we've done that for folks before. I've got colored ink, I've got a printer, we press it. It's nothing fancy, it's not laminated, but that's all you need. We'll provide it. And lastly, I just wanted to plug again, I know the City of Barrie is doing a lot on e-commerce. Provincially, federally, there's also Digital Main Street. It's a grant, it also provides a lot of grants for small businesses, and certainly municipalities have tapped into it as well. So if you haven't checked it out, literally Google in Digital Main Street, and there's 3 different buckets of things that you can apply to enhance your e-commerce. And again, contact me at any point, here to help. And thanks to the Chamber and everyone on this call.
you, Andrea. Up next, MP John Brassard.
Well, once again, it's great to be on with the Chamber this morning. Todd, thank you, Paul, Steph, Ian, good to have you aboard, Andrea as well. I guess my main message is that, my office continues to operate. We have staff actually working out of our office now. We had sort of a hybrid model of in-person at home, but everybody's together working on ensuring that we reopen in a safe manner, and we will be doing that very soon. There's no date to announce at this point, but we've got to put some of our safety measures in place. It will be on an appointment basis. The other thing I'll remind, and we're starting to get this now, despite the fact that the borders remain closed, and they're going to continue to remain closed between Canada and the US till at least July 21st, people are starting to think about passport applications. And I just want to remind everybody that there are no passport applications that are being processed at this point by Passport Canada. So we're starting to get calls from people who want, they see their passports are expiring and they want to renew them. The process is not in place right now to do that. So we're going to continue to keep people updated as we have through our social media websites at John Brassard CPC. You can always visit our website, johnbrassard.com, every day as the information becomes available. It's being updated on our website. And I know that Canada Day is coming up, and this year will be much different than it has been in the past. Locally, Andrea and I are working on some initiatives, keeping in mind some safe physical distancing and not to expose too many people to this, but we really want to try to make this special, at least in the riding of Barrie Innisfil, and know that your provincial, municipal, and federal members of parliament, provincial parliament, and local councillors and the mayor are all working together to make sure that we help as many businesses and individuals and the people that they employ get through this crisis. So again, these are valuable sessions, Todd, and I really appreciate the chance to address the Barrie Chamber and its members this morning. Thanks again.
Great, thanks, John. We always appreciate your participation. It's always very insightful. Up next, Ian Faris, Senior Vice President, Chamber Network Relations, Advocacy, Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Ian.
Thanks, Todd. It's been great to be on this this panel. This is very helpful to have all three levels of government. We talk about a number of issues that transcend the those boundaries, and it's very difficult for businesses to understand at some point some of these programs, and the commercial rents is a good example. If you're trying to find out more information on government programs or other resources, I mentioned our Canadian Business Resilience Network at cbrn.ca, so please visit that. Also, I'd really urge in the next couple of weeks, if businesses are having specific questions, they need some that professional business advice, go to the Business Resilience Service, and you'll find that again at our cbrn.ca website. You can get that toll-free number. It's a very helpful service. And I do want to thank the members of the Barrie Chamber. Barrie's been a very good chamber in terms of our chamber network across Canada, one of our 450 chambers and boards of trade across Canada. And we look forward to continuing to work with you, and want to thank everyone and have a great weekend.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. And to all our panelists, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Valuable, insightful information always, and all our viewers appreciate it. And as Paul will attest, the average view of these after the event is over 300 views of people taking it in when they physically have the time to do it. So again, in closing, thank you again to everybody for joining us and for the work you're doing in your businesses every day. We urge every leader in our community to maintain their focus on slowing the pace of the transmission of COVID-19. Whatever stage or operations your business may currently be in, Barrie Chamber is always here to help you. Please feel free to reach out if you need anything else. We also implore everyone to please shop local. We need your help more than ever to support our local businesses, whether it's a takeout from a restaurant, a gift certificate, or anything that can help a business ride out this storm. Every little bit will help. And finally, as social distancing measures are being slowly lifted, please ensure that you continue to follow all requirements and take them seriously. These are not to be taken lightly, even though the fear may be wearing off as the summer months become our main priority. But keeping the community safe and healthy is the responsibility of all of us collectively. And with that, thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a great weekend.